So 1.6, we're going to look at this chart right here. On this chart, there are a total of 4 different properties, and they each have their own version depending on whether they are addition or multiplication properties. So let's go through this list. We're going to start with commutative as our first property here. So commutative, if I think about that word, I think of maybe the word commute. So a commute, right? Your commute to work or your commute to school is like traveling from place to place. So when I see the commutative property of addition, I am talking specifically about the order in which numbers are added. And we know that the order in which numbers are added does not change their sum, okay? So for example, if I had 3 plus 6 plus 2, I know that that's the same as if I said 3 plus 2 plus 6, right? They equal the same thing. Okay, so commutative property of addition, we are thinking I can move my things around and they still make the same sum. We know that that property applies for multiplication too, right? The order in which numbers are multiplied does not change their product. So again, for example, 3 times 6 times 2 is the same as 3 times 2 times 6. We know this, right? This isn't new. We're just giving it a name. That is the commutative property of multiplication. The next property is the associative property. When I think of that word associative, I'm thinking of like my associates, the people who I associate with. Those are like my friends, right? Or the people in my circle. So associative is trying to get us to think about grouping. When I'm talking about grouping for the associative property of addition, it says the grouping in which numbers are added does not change the sum. So again, let's take those same numbers that I had before. If I do 3 plus 6 plus 2 with the 6 plus 2 in parentheses, I know that that is the exact same as if I said in parentheses 3 plus 6 plus 2. Right? The things that I am grouping together don't change when I'm doing addition. That same concept goes for multiplication. So the associative property of multiplication, again, it says the grouping in which numbers are multiplied does not change its product. So 3 times 6 times 2 is the same as 3 times 6 times 2. These first two are kind of self-explanatory. These are things that we see all of the time and we know, but maybe we don't know that we know. We don't know that they have a name. Now we know they have names. Associative property and commutative property. Okay, the next ones are a little bit weird. So the next property is called the identity property. When I am trying to talk about the identity property, I have what is called an additive identity. The additive identity is 0. So if I take a number like 5, what do I have to add to 5 for it to keep its identity, to keep who it is? What do I add to 5 to get 0? Or sorry, did I say that right? Yeah. What do I have to add to 5 to keep it the same? 0, right? That's the additive identity. So it says adding 0 to any number does not change that number. So 5 plus 0 is still 5. It's its identity. So if 0 is the additive identity, so when we're doing addition, if we add 0 to keep it the same, what do we think the multiplicative identity is going to be to keep it the same? Do you have an answer, Reed?
1.
Yeah, it's 1. Multiplying any number by 1 does not change that number. For multiplication, 1 is the multiplicative identity. So again, 5 times 1 is still 5. It has that identity. It is the same. Okay, last one here is the inverse property of addition and inverse property of multiplication. Our goal when we're talking about inverse is always to get to whatever the additive or multiplicative identity is. So for inverse, I'm trying to take a number, add something to it, and get 0. So for example, if I have 3 here, what do I add to 3 to get my additive identity, which is 0? Any idea? Jake? Yeah, -3. So adding a number and its opposite will always equal 0, which is our additive identity. So 3 plus negative 3, which is its opposite, equals 0. Okay, the multiplication one might be a little bit more tricky. So the inverse property of multiplication, I know that I want it to equal my multiplicative identity, which is 1. Let's say I take that same number 3. What do I have to multiply 3 by in order to get 1? James? Yeah, 1/3. We call that the reciprocal. Remember, we use that word when we talk about dividing fractions. It's just like if I took 3 over 1 and flipped it upside down. So for the inverse property of multiplication, we're multiplying by the reciprocal, and that gives us 1. I am going to quickly add on the property that we did on Friday, which is the distributive property. There is no distributive property of addition. It's always of multiplication. And remember, we did that on Friday in 1.5. And that's when we can take a number that's on the outside of some parentheses and multiply it to all the numbers inside of the parentheses. So something like that. Okay, any questions on any of these definitions or properties? Fantastic. Flip it over. This is essentially what your homework is going to look like. This is essentially what it's going to look like on your test as well. You will get the word bank on the test, so you can make yourself a happy little note. You will get this word bank. But it is important that we understand the difference. What I notice here when I look at this word bank, it is important that we are identifying the property itself, but also whether it's the property of addition or property of multiplication. If you need to abbreviate some of these things to fit it on the line, that is okay. I understand, as long as I know what you're talking about. So let's just go through these. In letter A, do we see what property this is? Jaden? Yeah, it is the associative property of addition. Perfect. Why? Yeah, we changed the grouping, you could say. So in the left side here, we were grouping 7 and 2, and then on the right side, we changed to grouping the 3 plus 7. What I should notice about this is that the order of these numbers is not changing, right? It still goes 3 plus 7 plus 2, 3 plus 7 plus 2. If the order changed, then I might have commutative property. What about letter B? What property is letter B? Yep. Yeah, the identity property of multiplication. It is staying the same. We are multiplying it by that multiplicative identity, which is 1, so that it stays the same. Multiplying by 1. Amazing. Okay, letter C, maybe a little bit tricky. What's this one? Tricky ideas. James? Are we changing what is being grouped? Look from the left to the right. Did we change what's inside those parentheses? We did? Yeah, we changed the order. So what property is it when we change the order? Jacob? Yeah, that's commutative property. So we have to be careful because they do try to trick us and put parentheses in there. But notice, the grouped things aren't changing. 3 and 5 are grouped here. 3 and 5 are grouped here. The only thing we change from left to right is we flipped the 5 and the 3. If we are flipping them, we're changing the order. That has to be commutative property. Okay, letter D. What do we got for letter D? Jacob? Yeah. Inverse property of addition. Remember, inverse property, we're trying to get to that additive identity by adding the opposite. Okay, letter C again. What property is this one? Tricky, tricky. Think about it. Look at your word bank. What we got? Yeah. Distributive property. I know, not one that we talked about today, but definitely one that we talked about on Friday. Remember, the distributive property says that I can multiply the term on the outside to every term on the inside. Multiply the outside to everything on the inside. Okay, just a few more. What's a letter D? What property? Jacob? What is that called that we're multiplying by? Perfect. Letter E, what we got? I'm adding 0. It's staying the same. Go ahead, Jacob. Because I'm adding 0. And then last but not least, what do I got for letter F? Is that a hand, maybe? Thinking hand? Yep. Yes, it is, because we are doing what? Why is it commutative? What doesn't change? What did we do to this? To the numbers? Okay. Yeah, the order changed. The order changes, but the sum does not change. Okay, any questions on this? This is essentially what your homework looks like. In order for your homework to be complete, you need a property and a good explanation.